Okay, guys. So we will start the session. What we will do today is a very small topic. I'll take only 25 to 30 minutes for today because we will be dealing with this topic, fundamental duties. Originally not there in the constitution, but it was added later. Okay. So in 1976, it was added in the 42nd Amendment. Okay. And it was added as Part 4A. So we already discussed about Part 3, fundamental rights, and then Part 4, we have discussed directive principles, and Part 4A. So they have asked even in mains also like this Part 4A directly. Okay, so you need to have a very good idea about this. So now, see, after this fundamental duties, what I'll do is I'll start with president and vice president, and then we will move on to emergency, and then parliament and state legislature, and like that we will move. So that is the reason why today I don't want to start a fresh topic. So I was expecting that I can cover this along with directive principles, but that day we took a lot of time. So that is the reason why I'm taking few minutes here, maybe 20, 25 or maximum 30 minutes. And after that, if you have any doubt on directive principles that we can discuss, so that is the agenda for today's session. Okay, so here what you need to know, basically this is very simple. There is nothing much to discuss. Part 4A, which committee recommendation? San Singh Committee recommendation. Okay, San Singh Committee recommendation was actually accepted the then Congress government and went for 42nd Amendment, and in that 42nd Amendment added the fundamental duties or the Part 4A. How many articles are there under Part 4A? Only one article. What is that? Article 51A. So this is the only one article which is there, which is related to fundamental duty. Guys, if you remember, I've told you something which you see in the capital letter. What does that mean? It is not there in the original constitution. It was added later. So that's why you will see Part 4A. Okay, Article 5, 51A. Okay, so 51A, and in that you will see 51A, subclause A, subclause B, subclause C, like that you will see up to K. Okay, so total how many are there? 11 fundamental duties are there. All these are very important, and you need to know all the 11. You don't want to mug it up like what you have seen in case of directive principles. You can use the logic and you can remember. Okay, but originally when 42nd Amendment Act, when it was passed, and when the Article 51A was added, it was only 10 fundamental duties at that time. Okay, so in which amendment the 11th one was added? Like this K, 51 clause K was added later in the 86th Constitutional Amendment Act. And I have discussed about this 86th Constitutional Amendment when I discussed about fundamental right? So something which was there in DPSP related to the elementary education or the education, and then DPSP was modified and it was added to fundamental right under Article 21A, right? The education for the children during the age of 6 to 14. Okay, so this is now the fundamental right. Then what is now there in the DPSP? DPSP 0 to 6. This also we have discussed. Now, what is there in the fundamental duty? At that time itself, I have discussed with you 86th Constitutional Amendment Act added one fundamental duty, that is 51A clause K, that is the fundamental duty of the parents to give education to the children or to send the children to the school for availing the benefit under the 86th Amendment Act, right to education. Okay, so we need to now see what all the fundamental duties are there. There will be 11 fundamental duties. All you need to know, directly they will ask you which among the following are the duty. Okay, so that we will quickly go through, and then we will also see the criticisms of the fundamental duty. Most important criticism will be what? When we discussed about directive principles of state policy or the directives, the most important criticism what we have seen there is it is not enforceable. Similarly, when it comes to fundamental duties also, there is no punishment or it is not enforceable directly. But there are many laws which are connected to fundamental duties as well. That also is listed here. If it is required, we will quickly go through that. Okay, so that is what we have discussed is what written here. The original constitution contained only fundamental rights and not the fundamental duties. So Congress, when it was passed, in fact it was during the Congress government, so they have claimed that it was a historic injustice or the mistake which was done by the constitutional makers at that point of time when the original constitution was enacted or prepared, but now it has been corrected in 1976. This was a statement which was made by Congress leaders and especially Indira Gandhi. Okay, so later in 1976, which constitutional amendment act? 42nd Amendment added the fundamental duties in the constitution. And in 2002, one more fundamental duty was added. So here it was 10. Guys, you can take down this. It is not there here. Here it was 10 in the beginning in the 42nd Amendment Act. But now in 2002, 86th Amendment, one more added. That is what? 51A clause K. Okay. So how many articles are there under Part 4A? Only one article. What is that? 51A. Part 4A, 51A. Okay. Now, from where we borrowed this? USSR. Okay. So, erstwhile USSR. And guys, most of the major democratic countries like US, Canada, France, Germany, they then and so on specifically contain a list of duties to citizen. So none of these constitution have any. They don't have, but it is there in some socialist countries, and in socialist countries it is not only duties. In fact, these duties are given much more importance or equal importance than the fundamental rights as well. Okay, so only one of the democratic countries actually Japanese constitution. It contained the fundamental duty, but when you see from where it is borrowed, we will go for USSR. San Singh Committee recommendations are not important. The recommendations, we just need to know the fundamental duties. And the fact is that not all the recommendations of San Singh Committee was added as the fundamental right. Some of them were extra also added. Okay, so not all recommendations are incorporated. Like some of the recommendations, like paying tax, that is also he recommended to make it as a fundamental duty. And if you're not following fundamental duty, punishment can be imposed. That was also recommended by San Singh Committee, but that all things were rejected. But most of the recommendations accepted. Some new things were added also. Okay, so the committee recommended the inclusion of separate chapter on fundamental duties in the constitution. So in that context, it was enacted the 42nd Amendment Act, and this amendment added new part, namely the Part 4A to the constitution. This new part consists only one article, that is Article 51A. Okay, so some of them which were not incorporated, guys, this is not important, but for your knowledge purpose, I'm just discussing it here. The parliament may provide for the imposition of penalty or punishment in case if non-compliance is there. So this is not actually included. Okay, no law imposing such penalty should be questioned in court of law. That is also not there. Anyway, the laws are not, this is not accepted, so this is obviously will not get accepted, right? Then the third one is related to duty to pay tax is also considered as fundamental duty. So that is also not there. What is important for us now? This is most important for us. Each one of this you need to remember, because they will ask you which among the following comes under Article 51A. Okay, so it's very simple only: to abide the constitution and respect its ideals and institutions. Guys, what do you mean by this ideals? We discussed already. When we discussed about the preamble, we have discussed about the ideals and aspirations, everything, right? What are the ideals? For example, this concept of secularism, sovereignty, socialist, democracy, all these are the ideals. Okay, and the national flag and national anthem. Cherish and follow the noble ideals inspired the national struggle for freedom. And this is a moral responsibility. Okay, so to an extent, even if you don't follow it, there is nothing. But that's not the case with national flag. If you insult national flag, then there will be punishment under different laws. But these are moral responsibility as well. So you can see some of them are moral in nature. Okay, so this is something which is moral. To uphold and protect sovereignty, unity, and integrity of India. To defend the country and render national service when called upon to do so. Guys, this is one case that I've discussed when I discussed about the fundamental right. Okay, I hope you can connect that. And I've told you, forced labor or the bonded labor, that article 23 and everything we have discussed, and I've given you one exception. This is one of the exception, right? So if the state can impose you to work on some area, maybe with payment or without payment, okay, so it should be of the public interest and it should be of national service. To promote harmony and spirit of common brotherhood, okay, amongst the people of India across religious, linguistic, and regional sectional diversities, and again practices derogatory to the dignity of women, okay, renounce the practices. To value and preserve the rich heritage of India's composite culture, these are general in nature. To protect and improve the natural environment, including forest, lakes. Guys, this is something which again related to this 1972, that environmental conference. If you have some knowledge about that, okay, after this conference, then this, especially during 1970s, this environmental consciousness was emerging. The Stockholm conference and everything was there during that time. So 1972, that impact is what you can see through this article, this one, right? To protect the environment. To develop scientific temper, humanism, and the spirit of inquiry and reform. To safeguard public property, even though this is a fundamental duty, guys, in almost all these cases you can see some law which is anyway protecting all these duties. So you cannot say that these duties are just moral in nature, and these duties, even if you don't follow the duty, you will not attract any punishment, right? So against this also, there are laws. If you damage the public property, you will be punished under several laws. Similarly, again, if you are challenging the common brotherhood, or if you are making some problems based on religion, which is what we call as communalism, or linguistic divisions, etc., if you try to create, there will be different laws which are in operation, right? So that means fundamental duties are also to an extent enforceable, but certain duties like this, nobody can do anything. Whether you respect or you cherish and follow the noble ideals of the freedom struggle or not, that's not a big deal, right? To strive towards excellence in all spheres of individual and collective activity, so that the nation constantly rises to higher levels of endeavor and achievement. To provide opportunity, this is the one which I've told you, added later in which amendment? 86th. So what about the others? 42nd. Which year? 1976. Which year? 2002. Okay, so this is also connected with fundamental right, and then also one DPSP. Fundamental right, giving education to 6 to 14. DPSP is related to 0 to 6. So 0 to 6 here, 6 to 14 here. Okay. So to provide opportunities for education to child or between the age of 6 and 14 years, this duty was added by the 86 Constitutional Amendment Act. The features, some of them are moral duties, like what I've told you. Others are civic duties. For instance, cherishing noble ideals of freedom struggle is a moral concept, and respecting the Constitution, national flag, and national anthem is a civic duty. Okay. Now, this is confined to citizens only. You cannot, this is not applicable on the foreigners. Okay. But when it comes to fundamental rights, some of them are available to foreigners and all are available to citizens. But here it is not that confined to citizens only. Like DPSP, this is not justiciable. Okay. So non justiciable in nature and does not provide for their direct enforcement by the court. Even the state also cannot move to the court if you're not following any fundamental duty, unless if the state has made a law in which you have to follow that. Like in case of public property, I've told you cannot make any damage to the public property, so automatically that is covered under a law, so the state can enforce upon that on law, right? Even that will be a criminal case as well. No legal sanction for their violation. So these are the features, and these are like the criticism also. Then what is the point in giving this, right? If it is non-justiciable and then there is no legal sanction, who's going to follow this? So that itself is actually going to be the criticisms, right? I don't think criticism we need to discuss here. You can just go through that. Significance, one of the most important significance, like this is something which you have discussed in DPSP also. DPSP also is not enforceable, but what is the significance of DPSP? It will actually, DPSP will actually help the Supreme Court or the courts in the interpretation of any laws, whether it is unconstitutional or not. If it is trying to implement the DPSP, and you know which specific DPSPs and which specific provisions and which specific fundamental rights that we have discussed before, right? So here similarly, if they help the court, this fundamental duties will help the court in examining the and determining the constitutional validity of a law, just like DPSP. The Supreme Court ruled that in determining the constitutionality of any law, if a court finds that the law in question seeks to give an effect to the fundamental duty, like one of the duties, what, protect the public property. So if you made a law in order to do the same, then it will be held constitutional. Consider such law as reasonable in relation to Article 14 or Article 19, and thus save such law from unconstitutionality. Okay. So here is where some of the laws which are inconsistent with the fundamental duties actually. Prevention of Insult of National Honor Act. So this is actually protecting the first one, right? Respecting national anthem, constitution, and national flag, etc. Similarly, various Protection of Civil Rights Act. So provide punishment for offences related to caste and religion. Indian Penal Code cover most of them. Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, that will prevent this communal organization and unlawful association, etc. Similarly, Wildlife Protection Act, Forest Act, all these will check the environment also.